If you're into haunted house horror stories, stick around. Today you're going to hear real accounts from people who lived in places marked by a presence no one could explain or ignore. Just like the story you're about to hear, where a family starts noticing strange things, knocks on the walls, faucets turning on by themselves, and a figure that shows up on the baby monitor in their daughter's room. But before we get into the story, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying tales. And tell me in the comments, what city or country are you watching from? You could feel something was off about that house from the very first week. It wasn't anything obvious, you know. No strange noises, no feeling of being watched. Not yet. It was more like a subtle unease, the kind you get when you forget something important but can't quite remember what it is. The air itself seemed to carry a weight you didn't notice at first, but it grew heavier with each passing day. My partner, our 2-year-old daughter, and I had just moved into this housing complex in the south of England. It was simple, compact, exactly what we could afford. 2 bedrooms, a cramped living room, a kitchen in the back. Nothing special. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet, the kind of place where everyone locks their doors by 8 and vanishes. At first it seemed perfect, stable, but it didn't take long for that sense of normalcy to start unraveling. The first weird thing happened in the bedroom, specifically against the wall behind our bed. It started with dry, rhythmic knocks. I figured it was just the pipes, or maybe the neighbor on the other side messing with something. But here's the thing. That wall didn't connect to anyone else's place. It was an interior partition. And yet, the knocking always came in the dead of night, between 2 and 3 in the morning. 3 knocks. Always 3. Like a code. One night I knocked back on impulse and it answered. 3 knocks. Again. Then silence. My partner thought I was making it up, until she woke up to the sound herself one night. She sat up shaking, asking if I'd heard it too. We got up, checked the whole house, nothing. Everything locked, everything in place. The next day we tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was the house settling, wood expanding. But deep down, we both knew it wasn't normal. Things started escalating slowly, like whatever it was had been testing the limits. First, the doorbell. It rang 4 times in half an hour. We lived on the ground floor so we could see right through the little window who was outside. And there was no one. I even went out to the street, looked around, total silence. And then the doorbell rang again while I was still standing on the sidewalk. I ran back inside. My partner was pale. She said she'd seen a shadow by the window, but when she went to open the door, there was nothing. No footsteps. No sound of someone running away. Nothing. We barely slept that night. And in the middle of our restless dozing, we heard a sharp thud against our bedroom door, like someone had punched it from the other side. Hard. The sound echoed through the house. Our daughter started crying at the exact same moment. I jumped out of bed and threw the door open. The hallway was empty, but the air, it was freezing, much colder than it should have been. We started debating whether we should leave for a few days, maybe go to my mom's place. But in the end, we decided we were overreacting. Maybe we were just tired from the move, adjusting to the new place. That's when the faucet incident happened. It was just another afternoon. I was home alone with our daughter. She was playing in the living room while I tried to heat up some food. When I walked past the sink, I nearly jumped out of my skin. The kitchen faucet was wide open, water gushing out. But I swear I hadn't touched it. I turned it off, shrugged it off, and went about my day. Less than an hour later, it happened again. And again. So I decided to record it. I called my mom on a video call and said, "Mom, look at this." And I showed her the sink. The faucet turned on by itself, right in front of her. She went quiet for a few seconds, then said, "I needed to get someone to bless the house." I laughed it off, but inside I knew things were spiraling out of control. And they did. That night we put the baby to bed and left the monitor on, like we always did. But at one point the monitor started crackling, like there was interference. And then, a voice. It was too distorted to make out the words, but it was deep, drawn out. I grabbed the monitor, thinking it was a neighbor, some crossed signal. And that's when I saw it. There was a silhouette in the corner of the room, standing, like it was watching the crib. I froze. I called my partner right away. She came running, rushed upstairs, and burst into the room. The baby was sleeping peacefully. Nothing in the corner, nothing by the window, just silence. And that cold again. The next morning, I went to the local church. I talked to the priest. I didn't even know where to start. He listened calmly without interrupting. Then he said it might not be a haunting in the classic sense, but an energy tied to the child's presence. He used the word poltergeist. Said he'd seen cases like this before, where the energy of childhood, when intense, could attract these kinds of manifestations. He suggested blessing the house. We set it up for later that same day. The priest arrived on time, with a small book, a vial of holy water, and a calm demeanor that, honestly, made me feel less ridiculous for calling him. My partner was still skeptical, but she held our daughter the whole time, like she instinctively wanted to keep her away from whatever was happening. He started with quiet prayers, walking through each room, sprinkling water in the corners, by the windows, at the doors. When he reached our daughter's room, he stopped. He stood there for a few seconds in silence, looking at the crib, like he was sensing something. He didn't say anything at the time. He finished the ritual, made a full loop through the house, and ended with a longer prayer in the living room. He thanked us for our trust and said if it was something spiritual, that should take care of it. Before leaving, he turned to me and said, "If the energy is tied to the child, focus on protecting her. Don't provoke it. Just welcome the light." I didn't fully understand, but I nodded, and for a few days it seemed to work. The knocking stopped. The doorbell didn't ring on its own. The air in the house felt lighter. We slept better. The lights stopped flickering. Everything felt normal. We started laughing it off, thinking maybe it was just the stress of the move, adjusting to a new place. I even turned off the baby monitor for a few days, wanting to believe it was all in our heads. Then, one night it all came back. But even stranger, I had just put our daughter to bed. The night was quiet, peaceful. My partner had already gone to bed, and I stayed in the living room for a bit, scrolling on my phone. That's when I heard the laughter. It came from her room. A muffled little giggle, short, like someone was playing with her. I jumped off the couch and sprinted upstairs. She was still asleep, but the stuffed bear she kept in the corner of her crib, it was on. It laughed when you squeezed its belly, but only when someone squeezed it. I'd had that toy since we bought it. No autoplay feature. I grabbed the bear and squeezed it every way I could, trying to see if it was a technical glitch, a stuck button. Nothing. It only worked when pressed. And that night it kept laughing on its own, alternating giggles with a childlike voice saying, "Wanna play with me?" I took the batteries out. It still kept laughing. That's when my partner came into the room holding the monitor. "Josh, look at this." On the screen, the room looked normal, but something was off. The edges of the image were distorted, like there was interference again. And in the corner of the screen, there it was. The silhouette, standing in the same spot as before. Only this time it moved. Slowly, like it was breathing. I walked to the corner without thinking. Of course, there was nothing there. But the cold returned, that dry, biting cold, like it was coming from inside the wall. Our daughter suddenly started crying for no reason. My partner shouted from the hallway, "The TV turned on by itself!" I ran back to the living room. The screen was flickering like the signal was out, even though there was no antenna. It cut in and out, and in one of the flashes, an image appeared. A child, facing away, standing in the hallway, wearing the same clothes our daughter had gone to sleep in. After that night, we decided we couldn't ignore it anymore. I went back to the church. The priest listened in silence as I told him everything. When I finished, he just said, "Maybe what you're dealing with isn't exactly evil, but it's an energy that feeds on presence, on fear." He suggested another blessing, this time deeper. He brought 2 more priests, and they performed a cleansing with prayers that lasted almost 2 hours. The atmosphere in the house shifted again, like the air itself had made room for something to enter. And just like that, it all stopped. For real, this time. The knocking vanished. The voices ceased. The faucet never turned on by itself again. The baby monitor went back to normal. The stuffed bear fell silent. Even the hallway light, which used to flicker every night, stayed steady. But still, we never found out what really happened. No neighbors reported anything similar. No strange stories about the place. No past accidents. No previous residents to tell us anything. It was like that house had chosen us for some reason. Months later, I was in my daughter's room, tidying up some toys, when the bear laughed again. Without batteries. Just once. Quick. Like it was saying goodbye. And that was it. Never again. But even now, every time I hear a toy laugh, I get that feeling again. The one that tells me we were never alone in that house. But for some reason, whatever it was, let us leave. What a nightmare. What did you think of the story? What score from 0 to 10 would you give it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. There are things we witness but can't explain. And even when everything seems to go back to normal, there's always that feeling that something might still be around. Just like the next story, where a family starts hearing sounds coming from inside the walls. Sounds that don't stop, no matter how hard they try to ignore them. On the first night, we heard what sounded like someone dragging their fingernails along the inside of our bedroom wall, right behind the headboard. A slow, insistent sound, like something was trying to claw its way out. My husband, Mark, turned on the bedside lamp immediately and just stared at the wall, trying to figure out what it was. I was frozen. All I could manage to ask was, "Did you hear that too?" He just nodded, eyes wide. The noise stopped for a few seconds, then started up again, louder this time, as if it knew we were listening. We figured it was a rat, or maybe a cat. Some kind of animal that had squeezed in through a crack. The house was old, built back in the early 60s. Thick brick walls, no drywall. But it wasn't hard to imagine something crawling through the pipes or slipping in from the attic. The next day, Mark pulled the bed away from the wall, knocked on it, pressed his ear against it. Nothing, not a sound. It stayed quiet for a couple of days. We even started to think we'd imagined it, or that whatever it was had moved on. But it hadn't, and it wasn't just a noise. One Tuesday night, I woke up to a sharper sound. It wasn't scratching anymore. It was like someone was tapping out a rhythm like Morse code. Thump, 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 thump. Mark turned the light back on, sweat on his forehead. I went up to the wall and knocked back. Silence. But as soon as I got back in bed, the sounds started again. Only now, they were coming from a different spot, near the closet door, on the other side of the wall. It was like something was moving in there. The weirdest part? During the day, the house was normal. Warm, bright, smelling like coffee and cookies in the late afternoon. Just an ordinary home. But as soon as the sun started to set, the air changed. The temperature in the bedroom would drop, even with the windows closed. And right before the noises started, you could feel it. A heavy energy in the air, like static electricity hanging there. Like something was about to happen. We called a handyman to take a look. He knocked on the walls, checked the whole structure, and said there was no empty space. Just brick cement, more brick. But he did find something strange. A roughly patched rectangle, sealed with thick mortar, like someone had hurriedly covered up a hole. Right where we heard the scratching the loudest, Mark became obsessed with it. He grabbed a putty knife and started scraping at the wall. Dust filled the air. The sound of the blade scraping echoed through the room, and I felt this deep, inexplicable dread. Behind the plaster, there was a deep hole, and inside nothing but darkness. Mark reached his arm in up to his elbow and pulled out something crumbly, a bundle of cloth tied with a red cord. I told him to throw it away, but he kept messing with it, trying to figure out what it was. When he finally unwrapped it, there were small bones inside, maybe from a bird, and a cracked piece of mirror. I felt sick to my stomach. The smell that came from it was sweet and rotten, like fruit left to spoil in a drawer. The energy in the room turned thick, almost suffocating. And that night, the flies started appearing. They always came to the same spot, the lamp on the nightstand. First 2, then 7, then dozens. They'd buzz against the hot bulb, drop to the floor, alive in a way that was impossible to ignore. By the end of the week, the ceiling seemed to hum with them. The rest of the house was clean, no trash, no forgotten food. Just our bedroom. And in my family's culture, back in the countryside of Minas Gerais, flies swarming in a clean room are a sign, an omen, a spiritual warning that something isn't right. My grandmother used to say that where there are too many flies, there's negative energy, or something much worse. We tried everything: spray, candles, traps. It wasn't until Mark decided to burn that cloth with the bones in the mirror that the flies disappeared. It was like someone had pulled the plug and everything just stopped. The noises ceased. The bedroom went quiet, and for a few weeks we slept in peace. But the peace didn't last. A year later, almost to the day the noises had first started, they came back. First as a faint whisper behind the wall, then scratching, then the knocking. This time it sounded more rhythmic, almost deliberate, like it was mimicking human sounds, like it was responding to our footsteps, the TV, our dinner conversations. The feeling of being watched came back with it. It was like the room was breathing with us, waiting. That's when I decided to record it. I left my phone pointed at the wall all night, the mic on. But every time I did that, nothing. No sounds, no knocking, no scratching. It was like it knew it was being watched. The second I turned the phone off and put it back in the drawer, the noise came back. Exactly the same. Same intensity, same rhythm. Like it had been waiting. Then there was one night when things got even stranger. We lay in bed expecting the usual, the scratching, the buzzing, the thumps. But that night, nothing. Total silence. And that was worse, because it felt like something was holding its breath with us. The room was dark, still, heavy, and I had this feeling, no, this certainty, that it wasn't because it was gone. It was because it was waiting for us to let our guard down. By that point, we'd tried everything. Called a plumber to check the pipes, an electrician to look for loose wiring, even a medium, behind my mother-in-law's back. And the scariest part? No one could explain what was happening. The walls were solid. No gaps between the bricks. Nothing that could move in there. No logical reason to hear scratching so clear, so present. No reason to feel what we felt. And yet, we did. The worst part was the helplessness. We lived there, but we never truly relaxed. It was like sharing the house with something that didn't want to be seen, but made sure to be felt. A presence that preferred the dark, that seemed to feed on our fear, our discomfort, our constant attempts to understand. In the end, we learned to live with it. We moved to another room, rearranged the bed, tried to pretend it was all in the past. But every year, around the same week, the noises come back. Always the same rhythm. Like they have their own calendar, marked by something that happened long before we ever lived there. And even though we don't understand, we listen. We pretend it's not for us. We sleep facing the other way. We turn on white noise. But deep down, we know there's something behind those walls. Something that stayed, something that's waiting. And the scariest part, this year, the noises started earlier. Creepy, right? When fear comes from something you can't see, the scariest part isn't what's happening. It's not knowing when it will happen again. The story you're about to hear now involves an old house, a strange presence, and the kind of manifestation that turns your own home into a place where you can't even trust what's real anymore. We had just bought that old Victorian house in rural Pennsylvania, isolated, surrounded by ancient trees and a rusted iron fence. The realtor called it a rare opportunity, one of those properties with character, and it had plenty of that. My boyfriend Jake fell in love with it instantly. He'd always been obsessed with old architecture, original woodwork, stained glass, all that stuff. Me? I went along with it more for his excitement than any real connection to the place. There was something about it that made my chest tighten, but I brushed it off. The first night, I woke up in the middle of the night with this strange feeling. It wasn't noise. It wasn't light. It was that physical sense that someone was there, watching me. You know that feeling when you just know there's a pair of eyes on you even in total darkness? I turned over, but Jake was fast asleep. The house was silent, but full. Like there was more in there than just the two of us. And I don't mean furniture. The next day, while he organized the basement, I cleaned out the kitchen cabinets. Every drawer felt like it had a story. Thick dust, old photos forgotten in the back, scribbled notes with dates from decades ago. A heavy, stagnant energy, the kind that follows you when you leave the room. The front windows looked out onto a trail that cut through the woods and vanished. And every time I passed by, I'd catch something out of the corner of my eye, like someone was leaving or hiding. That same afternoon, I heard Jake call me from the living room. His voice was clear. "Babe, come here quick." When I got there, he wasn't there. I checked the basement. Nothing. Went upstairs. He came in from outside, tool bag in hand, asking why I looked so shaken. He swore he hadn't called me. After that, it kept happening. Voices, footsteps, things moving on their own. And it wasn't just me. One time, Jake locked himself in the bathroom because he thought he saw someone sprint down the hallway. But when he went to look, no one was there. I tried to play it cool at first, chalking it up to adjusting to a new place. But the house felt more and more alive. 2 weeks later, our bedroom door locked itself in the middle of the night. Jake had gone to get water, and when he tried to come back in, he couldn't. The doorknob turned, but it was stuck. From inside, I heard him banging, begging me to open up, but I hadn't locked anything. When the door finally gave, he was pale, like he'd seen something. He said from the other side, he'd heard whispers and footsteps fading down the hall. We still tried to make it work, renovating the kitchen, setting up the office, but the house wouldn't let us. Lights turned on by themselves, even with the breaker off. Doors we swore we'd closed would be wide open, and every day that feeling of being watched grew stronger, like the house was studying me, not out of curiosity. It felt judgmental, a presence that seemed to be testing me. Soon after, Jake had to leave for a 2-week mission with the National Guard. I almost begged him not to go. I didn't say why, just that I wasn't feeling well. He thought it was anxiety. When he left, the house changed. Quieter, but heavier. I avoided the upstairs after 8. Started sleeping with the TV on, the lamp burning. Still, some nights I'd wake up to an unnatural cold in the room, even with the heater blasting, like the air was thick, still. The morning after the 3rd night alone, I found a gift at the foot of the stairs. A small wooden box carved with a frayed ribbon. Inside was a Christmas ornament, a porcelain angel, eyeless, its wing broken. I hadn't put it there, hadn't even seen the box before. I threw it away. That same day it was back, on the living room rug, no ribbon, the angel whole again, both wings intact. After that, it was a new gift every day. Small things, but unsettling. A cracked mirror, an old silver necklace tarnished, a red ribbon on my bed. The worst was an antique deck of cards stained like they'd been soaked. I tossed them twice. Twice they reappeared, always with the same card face up, the Queen of Swords. Her expression, there was something off about it, a direct, almost defiant stare. Then one night, as I tried to sleep, I felt 2 invisible hands press down on my shoulders, pinning me to the mattress. I wasn't dreaming. I was wide awake. Couldn't scream, couldn't move. The weight was real, like someone was on top of me, holding me down. The presence was freezing, suffocating. I smelled damp wood, mildew, something ancient. When I finally broke free, I ran to the bathroom, trembling. My shoulders were red, like real hands had gripped me. I started thinking about leaving, but the house seemed to know. Every time I considered it, another gift would appear, more aggressive, more symbolic, like it was reacting, like it was jealous, like it didn't want to let me go. Then, one night lying on my side, I opened my eyes and saw her, in the corner of the room, still, staring, a woman with dark hair, an old dress, gray skin, her eyes, full of rage. Not sadness, not pain, pure anger. The look of someone who didn't want me there. I couldn't scream, couldn't move, just lay there, frozen, while she glared at me from the corner. She didn't speak, didn't move, just watched me like she hated me. I blinked. She was still there. Blinked again. Gone. But the room felt charged, the air heavier, a smell of iron, old wood, and something sickly sweet. I tried to convince myself I'd dreamed it, but it didn't feel like a dream. The corner where she'd stood was darker than usual. The lamp I always left on was turned away. The bulb burned out. The suffocating started a few days later, always in the dead of night. I'd wake up unable to breathe, like something was sitting on my chest. My body wouldn't move, my throat locked, like I was drowning in invisible water, trapped in the mattress. And every time, just before I could break free, I'd feel those hands on my shoulders again. Strong, cold, claiming me. I called Jake and begged him to come home. He didn't fully understand, but he cut his trip short. The day he returned, my bags were packed. I didn't argue, just asked him to get us out of there. I didn't even take everything. Left clothes, dishes, furniture I'd picked out with care. The house could keep it all. We just wanted to leave. We sold the place for next to nothing. A young couple bought it. She was pregnant. I didn't have the heart to tell them anything. Just wished them luck. Later, we found out the last owner had been a reclusive woman who lived there until she died. Alone. No family. No friends. Neighbors said she filled the house with bird cages, never letting them out. When they found her body, she'd been decomposing for days. And all the cages, empty. Doors wide open. Not a single bird was ever found. Sometimes, I think she never left. That the woman I saw, the one who looked at me with so much hatred, was her. And the gifts were hers. Like the house had tried to make me the next resident, the next recluse. Like it chose. Trapped. Drained people until nothing was left. After we left, I never felt that watching sensation again. The negative energy vanished. But the memories, those stayed. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still see her stare. And for a second, I feel that weight on my chest. That drowning. Like a part of me is still in there. Or like she came with us. How bizarre. Some places seem to hold grudges, memories, or worse, intentions. But what about when it happens far from the city, in the middle of nowhere, where the only sound at night is supposed to be silence? In the next story, a scream coming from the forest breaks the routine of a quiet farmhouse, and what seemed like just a scare turns into an unanswered mystery. But before we continue, if you've made it this far, it means you're enjoying these stories, so hit the like button to let YouTube know you want more content like this, and never miss another horror story. That night, what woke me up wasn't the howling wind or the call of some lost animal in the woods. It was a scream, sharp, drawn out, the kind that seemed to tear through the air. A sound that just didn't belong in the suffocating silence of the backcountry where I lived. It wasn't the sound of a fight or pain. It was desperate. Like someone was being dragged out of this world. The house was simple, old wood with windows that rattled when the cold set in. I lived alone after my dad passed and my mom had to move to the city for work. It was our family's homestead, miles off the main road, surrounded by thick woods and a few abandoned cabins. People always said the place was beautiful, and it was, during the day. That night I was sitting on the porch staring up at a sky full of stars. The silence was almost absolute, broken only by the occasional creak of the rocking chair. Then the scream came, out of nowhere, from deep in the woods. And what froze me wasn't just the sound, it was what came after. An even heavier silence, the kind that seemed to press down on the air, like the forest itself had stopped breathing, like whatever had screamed was now listening. My body reacted before my brain could catch up. I jumped up and bolted inside, slamming the door behind me and pressing my back against it. My hands were shaking. I grabbed my phone and called my mom. I needed to hear a familiar voice, something to ground me. "Mom, something's wrong here." I heard a scream. "It came from the woods, Mom. It was awful." She didn't ask questions, just said she was grabbing her keys and coming over. The call dropped mid-sentence. Spotty signal wasn't unusual out here, but at that moment, it sent a chill down my spine. About 40 minutes later, I heard her car pull up in the yard. I ran to open the door. She got out with the keys still in her hand, her face tight with worry. But before she could say anything, her eyes locked onto something behind me and went wide. "Is that him?" I turned. Standing at the edge of the woods, still as a statue, was Jake, my ex. We'd broken up months ago and he'd never shown up here since. He was staring straight at me, but his expression was off. His skin was ashen, his posture rigid, like he wasn't even breathing. I took a step forward, but my mom grabbed my arm. "He's not right. Look at him, honey." Jake turned slowly and walked into the woods without a word, just vanished into the darkness between the trees. We ran after him, calling his name, but there was nothing. No snapping branches, no hurried footsteps, no rustling of animals. He was just gone. We walked back to the house in silence, a suffocating weight in our chests. The woods felt bigger, denser, like they'd closed in around him, and then it hit me. Something that made no sense. Jake never knew how to get here on his own. He hated the dirt road, and even when he visited, he'd get lost. How had he found the homestead at that hour? The night dragged on. Neither of us slept. We sat in the living room trying to make sense of what had happened. We heard the occasional noise from the woods, but nothing like that scream. My mom, always the pragmatist, was pale. She didn't try to explain it, just kept glancing at the window every so often, like she was waiting for something to appear. The next day, Jake texted me, said he'd been sick since the day before, had a weird nightmare, and woke up feeling like he was being pulled away. He didn't remember anything, and I swear he was over 120 miles away. Confirmed. Sent a photo of the hospital where he'd gone for help. I didn't reply. I couldn't. What we'd seen wasn't him, or it wasn't just him. The days after that crawled by. My mom started sleeping in my room, and we avoided going out after sundown. The feeling of being watched never left. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night convinced someone was walking outside. The chickens were always restless, like something was lurking near the coop. The dogs would bark at a fixed spot in the woods, hackles raised. The last time Jake appeared was a month later, again at the edge of the woods. But this time, he didn't look like himself. His skin was deathly pale, his eyes hollow, and he wasn't looking at me. He was staring past my shoulder like he was seeing something behind me. When I turned, there was nothing, but I felt a coldness on my back, a cold that didn't come from the wind. After that, he never showed up again. Not him, not anyone. The road leading to the homestead started giving us constant trouble. Landslides, potholes, like the land itself was trying to cut the place off. I ended up selling the property. My mom didn't want to come back either. To this day, when I talk about it, some people say it was just a hallucination or some strange coincidence. But the memory of that scream still sends shivers down my spine. The most haunting supernatural experience of my life wasn't seeing a ghost or a haunted house. It was realizing that something in those woods watches us, observes, chooses, and sometimes it wears a familiar face to call you, just to pull you back inside. Terrifying, right? What did you think of the story? What score from 0 to 10 would you give it? Leave your opinion down below. You could hear the wood groaning every time someone climbed those stairs, like the house was making a point of announcing another presence. And the problem was, more often than not, we were certain there wasn't anyone there. The house was beautiful. A classic colonial, wide porch, windows framed with intricate woodwork, a basement straight out of an old movie, and an attic I swore I'd never have the nerve to explore. It sat in Long Island, tucked away in a quieter stretch, surrounded by towering trees that swayed in the wind and cast eerie shadows on the walls. My wife Claire and I bought it after months of searching for a place with space, with history, with soul. And boy, did we get more soul than we bargained for. At first, everything was normal. Moving in, boxes everywhere, That good kind of exhaustion that comes with starting fresh. We laughed off the creaks, blamed the cold for doors swinging open on their own, and chalked it up to the charm of an old house. But that didn't last long. The first truly strange thing happened to Claire. I was at work late afternoon when she called. No hello, just, "Are you home?" Her voice was shaky. I said no, that I was still stuck at the office, and she went quiet for a few seconds. Then she told me she'd heard footsteps climbing the stairs. Heavy footsteps, like someone was coming up from the first floor toward our bedroom. And the worst part, the footsteps stopped right outside our door. When she opened it, no one was there. She tried to laugh it off afterward, said it was probably the house settling, maybe an animal or who knows. But I could see in her eyes she didn't believe that. Neither did I. The next night it happened to me. I was in the living room watching TV when I heard it. A slow, rhythmic creak like someone was climbing the stairs one step at a time. I paused the movie, froze, and listened. The footsteps kept coming. Slow, deliberate, like whatever it was knew I was listening. I bolted upstairs, heart pounding, but the hallway was empty. Just silence and the sound of my own breath. We started sleeping with the door locked. We didn't talk about it much, but it hung in the air, that feeling of being watched. Some nights I'd wake up in a cold sweat for no reason, sensing something off in the room, like something was there, just waiting for us to close our eyes again. A while later, Claire got pregnant. The house even seemed calmer during the early months. We started to think maybe it was all in our heads, stress, exhaustion, the move. But then the baby arrived, and things changed again. In the first week after bringing our son home, we were exhausted. Diaper changes, middle of the night crying, colic. And in the middle of all that chaos, Claire's mom came to stay for a few days to help. She slept in the guest room, right next to the baby's room, and she was the first to hear it. She said that in the middle of the night, she heard 3 loud knocks on the baby's door. Not the wind, not the house settling. It sounded like someone had knocked with their knuckles, firm, deliberate. She got up to check, opened the door slowly, but no one was there. We thought maybe she'd dreamed it, but she swore she was awake, and the look on her face at breakfast said it all. She was scared. After that, we set up a baby monitor, but it never caught anything clear. Just occasional weird noises, like whispers coming from nowhere. And the baby, well, our son started growing up with an unusually focused gaze. He'd often seem to be concentrating on something we couldn't see. Sometimes he'd smile at the ceiling like he was looking at someone. Other times he'd cry while staring at the wall. We figured, hey, kids do that, right? But one day when he was about 2, he blurted out, "The wall talked to me yesterday." Claire went pale. She asked what the wall said, and he answered like it was the most normal thing in the world. It said, "Grandpa has wings." We froze. Claire's dad was still alive, but mine had passed years ago, and our son had never seen a picture of him. Then he added, "The grandpa with white hair, he stands there on the stairs watching us." The stairs. Those damn stairs. Over the next few days, we tried to act like we hadn't heard anything. We kept up our routine, took care of our son, laughed off the strange stuff. But it was impossible to ignore. The energy in the house felt heavier and heavier, like something wanted to be noticed, heard, acknowledged. We started avoiding certain parts of the house, especially the upstairs hallway. Without even discussing it, we both began heading downstairs before dark and rarely went up alone at night. The atmosphere between us changed. Claire grew quieter. I started sleeping poorly. It was like the exhaustion of parenthood had mixed with a constant tension, like something was draining our peace, a spiritual presence that sometimes felt protective, but most of the time just left us uneasy. The only relief was seeing our son seemed okay. He never got hurt, never had nightmares. In fact, he talked casually about this grandpa with wings, said he looked after us, that he scared away the bad shadows. Still, the fear didn't go away. The feeling of being watched was constant. Even our friends noticed when they visited. One said he got chills in the hallway. Another commented that the house felt like it was watching back. That's when we started looking for answers. not out of desperation, but necessity. Because that supernatural experience, that negative energy masquerading as protection, we couldn't ignore it anymore. Our search began cautiously. First, it was random internet searches, then forums about supernatural experiences. Most of the stories seemed over the top, dramatic, but every now and then we'd find one that mirrored ours. Old houses, spiritual presences, children who saw things, and always the same feeling described. It wasn't exactly a threat, but it wasn't peace either. One day, Claire found the name of a local historian who wrote about colonial homes on Long Island. We set up a meeting with him, just to understand our home's origins better. The guy showed up in a rumpled suit, crooked glasses, and a folder full of yellowed papers. When he saw a photo of our house, he went quiet for a moment. Then he said, almost in a whisper, "This place is over 200 years old. It's been a convent, a school, and for a time, a makeshift shelter for Civil War widows." He told us that, according to old records, one of the most well-known residents had a habit of writing messages on the walls, prayers, accounts of visions, pleas for protection. Most had been painted over during renovations, but some, he said, might still be there, hidden beneath the layers. Claire became obsessed. She started peeling back the wallpaper in the baby's room with a putty knife while he slept in his crib. And near the baseboard, she found it. Small, crooked handwriting. "He still guards the stairs." It hit like a punch to the gut. That explained a lot. Or worse, confirmed what we already knew. It wasn't just in our heads. After that, things escalated. The baby monitor stopped working out of nowhere. The crib would rock gently on its own, with no breeze. Doors we'd locked would be unlocked in the morning. And one night I woke up to the sound of my own voice calling our son's name through the monitor. But I hadn't said anything. I'd been asleep. So had Claire. Fear became part of our routine. We couldn't relax anymore. We'd wake up in the middle of the night, sweating, hearing muffled whispers that seemed to come from the walls. Some days, the whole house felt like it was breathing. A denser air, almost damp, clinging to the skin. And just when you thought it was calm, there it was. That old sound. Footsteps climbing the stairs. Our son kept talking about the grandpa with wings. He said he didn't like it when people were angry, that he got sad when we argued. And we were arguing a lot. About everything, about leaving the house, about the fear, about the guilt of bringing a baby into this place. The house was affecting us. One weekend, we decided to spend 2 days at Claire's parents' place, just to get away. I thought it would help, but the truth was, it only highlighted how drained we were. We slept better, ate in peace, and our son was calm, content. When we returned and pulled up to the gate, he gripped my hand tightly and said, he was sad we left. That's when I realized the presence in that house wasn't just ours. It was his. And it didn't matter if it was my dad's spirit, someone who'd lived there before, or a mix of everything. It had formed a bond with us. In a strange, heavy way, it was like we'd been chosen. Even so, we still considered moving. We started looking at other houses, talking to realtors, researching schools for our son. But every time we got close to making it happen, something fell through. A financing issue, a rejected offer, or just a gut feeling that it wasn't the right time. That's when I understood. Maybe the house didn't want us to leave. Acceptance didn't come all at once, but gradually, we started to live with the idea that this was part of our life now. It wasn't just a supernatural experience, it was our story. We began lighting a candle each night in the hallway, like a sign of respect. Claire placed a chair near the stairs, saying it was for Grandpa to rest. It might sound crazy, but it worked. The activity lessened. The house's energy became lighter. Not exactly peaceful, but less aggressive. Years later, we still live here. Our son grew up, stopped seeing the grandpa with wings, but sometimes he'll look at the stairs with that same focused gaze he had as a child. I know he still senses something. We don't understand it all. Maybe we never will. But we've learned to coexist with the presence. It didn't disappear, it just changed. And as strange as it sounds, there's a certain peace in knowing there's someone, or something, watching over us. The house still makes its noises, breathes, moves in the shadows. But now, when footsteps climb the stairs, we don't run to see who it is anymore. We just listen and respect, because the memory of what happened here never really leaves. So, do you still feel like something's watching you from nearby? After all these stories, it's hard not to glance twice at the staircase or that dark room next door, huh? If you made it to the end, comment "haunted house" down below. Only those who stayed till the end will get it. And don't forget to subscribe so you can keep receiving these spine-chilling stories that make you think twice before turning off the lights. If this video kept you hooked, give it a like. It shows you enjoy this mysterious atmosphere and helps me keep bringing stories like these. There's another video right here with even more stories just like this one. Click and keep going with me. Just don't forget to leave the lights on.